Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Hog Roundup with Jacob Morris. Got a jam-packed show for you today, one that I'm really excited about. ESPN Arkansas's Ty Richardson, as always, joins the show. We're going to talk a little bit of football. We go position group by position group after the spring portal window, break it down, give some ratings 1 to 10 where we feel confidence-wise on the different position groups for the Hogs heading into the fall of 2025. And then wrapping up, we talk a little bit of baseball. Heck of a weekend for the Diamond Hogs, taking down number 1 Texas, sweeping the Longhorns for the first time in program history, and then Ty headed to Baton Rouge this weekend, so we get his perspective on the LSU series coming up. All that and more on the Hog Roundup. Enjoy. Now joined by ESPN Arkansas's Ty Richardson. You know him well. And Ty, we talked a little bit of football last week. We talked football with the caveat of, hey, we're still in the spring portal window. We're not entirely sure of what this whole thing's going to look like. We have at least a little bit of a idea now, solidified nature of what this roster is going to look like come fall, come Alabama A&M, which is some 116 days away or something like that, which feels a little bit odd. So we're going to keep it simple. What we're going to do is we're going to go through position group by position group, 1 to 10, and we're going to quickly go through confidence of where we're at. And so I think it's only fair we start offense, and we start with where everybody is thinking. We start quarterback. So tell me, how are you feeling quarterback position group as a whole? And that's a little bit of a different conversation than a Taylon Green. So you can kind of take that 2 different directions. 1 to 10, where are you at in terms of that?
Well, not only did Bobby Petrino have some positive things to say about Matt and Iamaliaba, who's no longer here, but he had some good things to say about KJ Jackson, Boda, I guess Trevor
Yeah.
Williams, the Florida State kid they just brought in, and then Grayson Wilson as well. So that's what your quarterback scholarship room looks like, unless I'm forgetting somebody. Of course, Taylor Green, one of the big notable quarterbacks that's back this fall for an SEC squad. You never know about a backup until you thrust him in there. No one outside of Greenwood knew who Tyler Wilson was prior to that 2010 Auburn game, and then he came in and showed out. So unless you actually throw these kids in the fire, I mean, I'll give Malachi Singleton credit. He led them on a drive against the Tennessee Volunteers in crunch time. It's just one of those things where it's very difficult to really map out and determine how good a backup is in spring and fall camp until you actually see it in front of your own eyes and against SEC competition, Jacob.
Yeah, you and I talked last week. That's the key when breaking down the quarterback room. Is it's unfortunate to talk about, but your worry and the thought process that you always have is with Taylon Green's dual threat ability. What makes him so great also makes him potentially injury prone, and potentially you realize, hey, we're going to be looking at a guy that we maybe need somebody to come in and take meaningful snaps in an SEC game. It just give me if you're looking at just Taylon Green, we talked a little bit about where he falls in terms of SEC quarterbacks last year. 1 to 10, where are you giving Taylon Green in terms of just QB1, the start of the Razorbacks are running out week 1, 2025?
I got a 6.5 or
Okay.
7. I
Yeah.
mean, I want to see it.
Yeah.
So like you have to unpack that answer a little bit. Against Tennessee prior to the injury, there was a 4th down conversion, a missed
Mm-hmm.
goal line throw. Like he made some great plays in that game. They just didn't put up a bunch of points. He got injured, cheap shot, and wasn't allowed to finish that game. I have no doubt in my mind Taylor
Yeah.
would have been in a similar situation leading that team down the field as Malachi did. Give him credit for keeping Arkansas in a game and give Malachi credit for finishing it. But I know there was that long pass in Auburn, Satania, but like, do you have that locked in SEC moment that Taylor had last year? Maybe the Isaac Tesla pass
Yeah.
against Texas A&M, which they end up losing. So it's like you remember plays here and there, but it wasn't all put together. And that's hard to ask for a kid that was in year 1 of the Bobby Petrino system and was still getting used to playing in SEC caliber football. But I'm not going to jump the gun and say he's going to be a top 3 quarterback
Mm-hmm.
all SEC in this league. I think that'd be foolish. If he is, then they'll win 7, maybe 8 games this fall. But it's just, you got to see it. You got to see it, Jacob.
It's consistency with Taylon. I'll go a fraction level higher than you. I'll say 7, right? If you're just taking Taylon Green and you're not taking the QB room as a whole. And I think it's because with Talon, we know the book on this guy at this point, right? It's the highs are really high. He has the athleticism. If you're putting him percentile wise, he can make plays with his feet. He can make plays outside of the pocket that 99.9% of college quarterbacks cannot make. It is the consistency in the making mistakes in terms of turnovers or whatever it might be that you have to eliminate when you look at Talon. And that's just a part of the game. It doesn't matter if you make 3 uber athletic plays, if you make a couple boneheaded ones in there as well. It comes down to decision making, and that's what you hope. And we won't know until week 1, and we really won't know until week 2 and the rest of that schedule arrives, where Talon has made a step forward in terms of processing, in terms of not locking in on one option. I'll stay 7. I'll stay a little bit conservative, but I think the upside's there, and you just hope for year 2 in a Bobby Petrino offense that he's able to keep going with all of the upside that we've seen, but add in a little bit more of that decision making and bring the interception numbers a little bit down. Let's go wide receiver room, because this one's an interesting one for me. I'll give you a little bit of a spoiler. I'm going to be pretty pessimistic here. 1 to 10, how do you feel about the pass catchers for the Hogs next season?
I'm going to be with you, man. I mean, you lose Armstrong, Tesla, Satania, Luke Has. I mean, and I know that's not a wide receiver, but is a pass catcher. So it's hard to be overly positive about this group. I know there's fans when you hear about Cam Shanks, you hear about Raylan Sharp, Cisse, and some of these other guys that they've plucked out of the portal, including recently Jaylen Brown, who they just signed. There's a level of intrigue and excitement maybe can be included on that, but you got no idea if these kids can play in the league. See, you and I will give as much credit to Andrew Armstrong as humanly possible. We got to remember he was in year 2 of the SEC.
Yeah. Yep.
Year 2. He didn't do that in year 1. So this idea that Arkansas is just one of these guys is going to be Andrew Armstrong, I think is so dumb. Like it was one of the best single seasons we've ever seen in a Razorback uniform from that position. So I am that. In fact, if you want to just come right or get right down to it, Jacob, that's the position group I'm the least confident in this fall. And I don't even think it's close. Like secondary, maybe a close second, but I still think there's a big gap. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope Ronnie Fouch has these guys ready to go. But man, that's a lot of new faces in one room.
Yeah, I agree with you. You hit the nail on the head. It's where I'm most pessimistic. And if you want to kind of paint the nightmare wheels fall off scenario for this team, and you want to go back to the guy we just talked about in terms of Talon Green, something that could prevent him from taking that step forward is no reliable pass catcher pops up. That's a very real possibility here. Just like you got to look at if you want to go glass half full, maybe one of these guys is going to pop. Well, the opposite is true as well, and that could potentially hurt Talon, especially with the way that almost to a fault sometimes he relied on Armstrong in a way where he didn't look elsewhere. But I think a lot of people, and I'm not trying to press the big red panic button for folks here, but it's clear with the priority Arkansas made it in the portal. I think some people don't realize just how much they lost from the wide receiver position and really just pass catchers as a whole. If you start rolling down, if you go to last year's team and you organize by receptions, right? I got College Football Reference up right here. You got Armstrong, 78 receptions, right, in the wide receiver position, gone. Isaiah Satania, 37 receptions, gone. Isaac DeSlaw, 28 receptions, gone. Luke Has, not even a wide receiver, gone. DeBinion, gone. Broden, gone. Jaquindon Jackson, gone. So we're just talking receivers right now. But if you take pass catchers, your top 7 pass catchers from a season ago, top 7, not your 2, 3, 4 options, top 7 from a season ago will not be putting an Arkansas uniform on next year. You got to go all the way down to Jordan Anthony, who had 8 receptions last year. So obviously, So that's why you bring in a lot of different guys, right? And I think there's a lot to be excited about potentially. They love Raylan Sharp. I think Courtney Crutchfield's a great example of a guy that Arkansas missed on a highly recruited guy. He goes to Missouri for 1 year. He comes in. You could potentially be really excited about what you have there. But the key is you don't know what you have there. And so if we're going 1 to 10, it's a 2 or a 3 for me, just from the standpoint that it's a lot of unproven talent. I'm that low. I just am until you see it, right? Show me, right? And some of these guys could pop, but you're bringing in a lot of group of 5 guys. And a lot of the other worry for me is physicality, height, size. that was a big just kind of moniker for the wide receiver group last year. Ty, it's the complete opposite this year. You have a lot of really small burners, and that could work. Bobby Petrino loves speed, but it's a lot of the same wide receiver. I am nervous about the wide receiver group, and I hope I'm wrong. I could be wrong, but right now I got no choice but to be pessimistic.
I think everything you just said, and the fact that you laid it out, the 7 pass
That's
catchers
crazy.
is really hard to dispute in any way, shape, or form. So hopefully Arkansas will get some of those guys to pop, as you just say. But and we don't even know about Jordan Anthony either.
No.
So that's, I mean, it could be 8.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you go 8, then you might as well just keep going because, then Rodney Hill 9. So if you don't get Jordan Anthony back,
Wow.
you got to go down to C.J. Brown with 5 receptions last year, which would be number 10 in terms of pass catcher. So that's a welcome to college football in 2025 thing, first and foremost, but also you better hope these transfers pop in a big way.
And CJ is a good example. I got a chance to catch up with him last summer, and he was, again, a really speedy kid from Bentonville.
Yeah.
I remember, I mean, and he wants to have a better season, because I remember his season last year in 2 parts: a wide open missed drop on a comeback route, and the fumble against Texas.
Yeah.
Like, those are the 2 things. And I want him to dominate this year and explode. And I guess this is what will be his redshirt freshman season. I think he redshirted. I don't think he not got enough games. If he did, then that's my fault for not looking it up. But either way, I hope he uses last year as motivation to have a much better season in 2025. And say, listen, it's asking a lot for true freshmen to make an impact in college football, regardless of conference. But that's another player that could have a say about what that room looks like moving forward.
Yeah, and you're projecting out now, but another fascinating piece that he wasn't here in the spring, but Antonio Jordan, who's from the Warren pipeline, he is a guy who he looks made in a lab. He is 6'5", 200 something, and apparently can just fly. It is really hard for a true freshman to contribute to the C.J. Brown point, but it's a different type of wide receiver, and maybe even just from that standpoint, we end up seeing a little bit of him. There are a lot of guys with high upside, but you need that high upside to flash. Otherwise, it could be dangerous. For kind of the same reason, let's go tight ends quickly. 1 to 10 here. I mean, you lose Luke Haas. That's kind of where it starts and finishes. You bring in Rohan Jones out of Montana State. You keep Andreas Pat. I always mispronounce that. Andreas, we'll say. You bring him back, and then you got Jaden Platt as well. Yeah, that's what it is. That's how it made. And then Jaden Platt from Texas A&M as well. Where do you fall? Tight end group, Morgan Turner's position group here for the Hogs.
Yeah, so I kind of thought that they were going to add, I guess they still can, someone out of the portal. Hadn't happened. I just assumed that was, I don't know if they missed. I mean, you're used to Arkansas is used to the DJ Williams, the Chris Craggs, the Hunter Henrys. I mean, Sprinkle was pretty solid. I mean, they've had some good tight ends here in Fay. Heck, Jason Peters was playing it back in the day.
Yeah.
This group doesn't measure up at all. I mean, you can make it. I don't put as much emphasis, and maybe I should, on the tight. Like, I'm more worried about wide receivers because I know that's who Taylor's going to throw the ball to.
Yeah.
But you got to kind of put this in the same 2 or 3 category you just did with the wide receivers. And like, we're not trying to be like overly negative here.
Yeah.
But the idea that this is like a 6 or 7 group, either the last 2 we mentioned, like, you're nuts.
Yeah.
You're just nuts. And I hope Coach Turner gets the most out of these guys. But even at maximum potential, are you blown away what this room looks like? No. I mean, my brother who loves Razorback, he said, and I quote, "This is the worst tight end group in Power 5." Now, he has no way of researching or knowing that. Okay. Yeah, and it's Power 4 now.
Yeah.
But like, it is at least on paper, it's an underwhelming group. And I hope these 3 guys and more shut me up. I'd love nothing more for them to shut me up this fall. But you can't look at this room and be like, whoa, that jumps off the page.
Yeah. It's the type of thing where you hope, right, that in November we can come back here and I can clip what you just said and we can throw that up and be like, oh, Ty's all wrong. But it's sure, you don't want to be overly negative, but it's like you got to shoot it straight too. It just is similar to the wide receiver group. You're going to have to see it. in terms of
Mhm.
production from this group. And there are guys that they're excited about as well. Gavin Garrettson, the freshman that they got, they flipped him near signing day. They're really excited about what he can be, but that doesn't help you in 2025 against the schedule that you
Mhm.
have. And so I fall in the same kind of area you do, tight end wise. And again, that would be one of my major concerns when you start talking about what Taylon Green can be. What type of weapons does he have? You're going to need somebody to step up, and that's going to be a theme that Arkansas is going to have to figure out and figure out fast. It's going to be, especially with the way that schedule starts, they're going to look high and mighty and flying against Alabama A&M. But with Memphis, Ole Miss, and Notre Dame before you hit the month of October, you better figure something out pass catcher wise, and you better figure out fast. Let's go running backs. How you feel about the guys in the backfield with Taylon Green? Give me a 1 to 10 on the backs for the Hogs.
I mean, you've heard good things about Mike Washington, seen
Yeah.
some stuff you like. Braylon's apparently the best shape of his life, which is encouraging after he entered. I mean, how many? I don't really remember how many times that happened. You got AJ Green back. I mean, I remember AJ Green, that run he had against BYU,
Texas
run he had
too.
against Texas.
Yeah.
I have some good memories of AJ, and maybe he can put it all together in his senior season. So there are some elements of this room you like a 5, 6, and 5
Yeah.
almost sounds too low because I think there's some quality, but like I don't know if people realize what they lost in Jaquindon Jackson.
Yep.
Jaquindon was leading the league in touchdowns and yards for a good chunk of the season. Listen, he had fumble issues and
Hmm.
he couldn't stay healthy. The latter, I don't know if it was always his fault. He seemed like a tough kid. Some guys are just, I don't know if brittle's the right word, but they just have a run of rotten luck. And
Yeah.
Jaquindon might fall into that camp in just terms of injuries. But this is another position group where you like some of the pieces, but it's a wait and see. Like I mean, they saw Braylon almost run that touchdown against State, and they've seen AJ do some things here. But Arkansas fans have been so burned these last 3 years in terms of like overexcitement to
Yeah.
what you're over pumping the position group, and so I'm going to be a lot more cautious when it comes to discussing this team. And I hope, like you just said about 2 or 3 minutes ago, I hope we can play back
Same.
all these clips, Jacob.
Same for
I
me.
hope we can play back these clips in November. They're on the brink of 9 wins,
Yeah.
and we're just rubbing our own noses saying
Yeah.
we're the dumbest people ever. I hope that happens, but
Yeah.
I we'll see.
Yeah, I hope I can toss a clown nose on and play the receiver clip back that I said, right? And just say, hey man, I was
I'll be right
wrong.
there with
Yeah,
you.
I've never been more happy to be wrong, but I'm right there with you. I'm not gonna forecast something that you just really have no clue on. And that's the key. And what I will say about the running backs, I'm same as you, kind of 5 or 6. I like that they have different options and different types of backs. So you
Mhm.
have Braylon, who I'm not doubting, by the way, that he's in better shape. I just do always love that. Have you ever heard a coach say, this guy's not in shape in spring? It's just everybody's in the best shape of their life in terms of spring. But Braylon,
Yeah.
I'm not doubting that at all. But Braylon obviously is a very specific type of back, and man, he can hit you. In the way that he performed and looked as a true freshman. I mean, we said this in spring last year. It's like that guy is not a true freshman, just with the size that he had, and for him to be able to contribute the way that he did outside all the portal stuff, he's a good weapon to have back. And they really like what they have in Mike Washington, AJ Green. They've talked a lot about Cam Settles, another true freshman, speed guy as
Mhm.
well. Maybe he can contribute. And obviously,
Parkview kid, right?
yes, yeah, and
Okay. Yeah.
and you lose a couple guys in the portal, but I think it was just a too many cooks in the kitchen type of situation. Terrell Reed,
Mhm.
I think he committed to Louisiana Monroe a couple minutes ago, actually. But you have different types of backs. It's just it's going to be interesting to see who ends up on the field most, because Mike Washington talked about wanting to become a more complete 3-down back, and that's just not what Braylon is at this moment in terms of pass catching
Mhm.
and whatever it might be. So I mean that's going to be a wait and see, as a lot of these position groups are. We'll round out the offensive line. So this one's interesting because I think a lot of people feel good, but it's going to be shuffling pieces as well with, the guys that they brought in out of the portal, and, what that means for guys like Carmona moving inside and, playing left tackle last year. Where are you at with the offensive line and the guys that are going to be protecting Taylor?
Well, I think it's going to be interesting to see how Carmona moving on the inside affects him and affects the offensive line. I mean, they got beat off the edge a lot
Yeah.
last year, so the hope is a few shuffles, a few additions change that. I mean, Sam Pittman's best offensive line, at least as the head coach, was in 2021 when they led the Power Five in rushing, and they
Hmm.
have not had near a unit since. Um, I think when you look at this group, I would give this more of like what we just said with the running backs, like a 5, hopefully a 6.
Yeah.
But it's one of those areas again where fans have been told the same script last
Yeah.
3 years. And I hesitate to tell you that they're going to be exponentially better with this squad. I hope they are.
Mm-hmm.
You've got this guy has had a track record of success with offensive linemen, and hopefully he knocks it right with this group. And he always talks about wanting to run the football, and you think about why that it helped when you had an All-American on the outside, Traylon Burks, back in 2021, where it was really difficult to leave him one-on-one. And they just don't have that. Part of like opening up the running game is having a guy that you cannot leave in single coverage. Mm-hmm. And so I would guess that you're going to have a lot of defenses that will key on that running game, load the box, and make Taylor beat him over the top. And that's going to come back to the offensive line, being able to pass protect, blitz, pick up blitzes, and everything else that falls under their jobs when it comes to just what they have to do each and every down.
Yeah, and we sound like a broken record, but it's just the case with the amount of roster turnover this team had. We sound like a broken record saying it's going to be a wait and see. We'll see how a transfer pans out, right? But that's going to be the key for this offensive line. Again, everybody looks like national champs in spring, so you can only take what you can hear, right? But the staff has been incredibly complimentary about a couple of the transfers that they brought in. You bring in Caden Kittler from UCF. He's now your center, right? And then Corey Robinson, their perspective on that was, he played so well that we need Fernando to shift inside, right? And so that would be that's the kind of the key, because tackle position was it was sketchy at times for the Hogs last year. And you combine that with a quarterback that had a tendency to get happy feet and move, and it killed a lot of drives, and not all of those were on the offensive line. That's part of Taylor learning in year 2 as well. And I think that's always a key is people sometimes just look at sack numbers, right? And man, the offensive line needs to be jettisoned off and bring in the second group. And sometimes it's like, man, you blocked your guy and Taylor might have run right into something, or whatever quarterback you want to use. That's something to think about as well. But it's going to be these transfers. And there's also some young guys they're excited about as well. You bring in Shaq McCroy. I mean, the size on that dude, 6'8", 300 or whatever. And it's so – and same with I'm blanking on his name right now. The Ole Miss, the freshman that they brought in.
Ole Miss freshman
they brought in. It's going to kill me if I don't remember it right now.
I apologize for not being there. The ones you bring in Kittler, Robinson.
Was it Broussard?
I'm
going to look it up.
Is it Kavion Broussard? Is that it? It's Kavion Broussard? Okay. Yeah.
Yes, it was. All right. I feel better about that now. There's young guys as well they bring in with eligibility, and we'll see how that ultimately shuffles out. I'll be a little bit more optimistic, 6.5, just because of how excited they seem to be about Kittler. And, Carmona flashed. If he really is a better fit in guard, and he was pretty honest, he said, I've never really played this before. We'll see how it goes. But I think there's potential there. It just is, you need that. It starts and finishes with the offensive line, and Arkansas is going to need it in a big way. Let's shift defensive side of the ball now, and defensive lines. Interesting as well. Where do you fall in terms of a line that has to replace a lot? You lose a third-round pick in Landon Jackson. You lose Eric Gregory off of that line, two guys that have really been almost the face of the defensive line for a little bit outside of Cam Ball. Where do you fall on the D-line?
Well, it starts with Cam Ball in the inside. You got a couple young kids in Charleston Collins and Quincy Rhodes, 2 Little Rock natives, if I remember that right. And so it's one of those things where hopefully they just follow the leader, and that's Cam. Not only is he the most charismatic player off the field, but he's one of the best players on it. Arkansas Deke Adams has done a really good job here. I mean, they've gotten some players. He has maximized his talent at that position group. Are there sack totals and TFLs off the charts? No. I can't remember if he was the one that was here back in 2022 when they had Drew Sanders. I can't remember if they had that or not. They had good sack totals that year, but they're not overwhelming, but they have solid defensive lines and they've had some good players. But you mentioned the turnover. I mean, just so many guys that you've lost, and it wasn't just those two, but some others, the transfer portal as well. So hopefully some of these players that they brought in will be good additions. I think people are excited anytime you talk about Ian Jaffard. I mean, he's down to 340, 350, if I remember that
Yeah.
right. I might have to double check on his weight totals, but he's definitely lost some weight since he's been here. And I think a lot of us remember how imposing Terrence Mount Cody was for Alabama. Like anytime you have a defensive lineman that is that type of number, you're as a fan, you're just kind of excited. Now, is
Yeah.
he going to be the second edition of Mount Cody? Probably not, but
Never know.
it is a player that I always think about at that position group.
Yeah, edge is going to be really interesting. Who steps up, right? I mean, you lose Landon Jackson. It goes without saying it's going to be a big hole to fill. And it's like you said, Ken Talley from Michigan State's another guy they brought in and, addressed it in the spring portal as well. And I think that was important. And really, and I don't say this in a bad way. It just is they're giving themselves darts. They were throwing darts in the portal and just saying, let's bring in depth pieces and make these guys compete for it. I'll fall in the 5 range. That's where I'm at in terms of defensive line. It just is going to be, it's a new group and it's going to be a group that needs to define itself pretty quickly as well. Linebackers, where do you fall? Some returning pieces for Arkansas here. You can't say that at a lot of position groups. Where are you at with the linebackers?
I'm really excited about Bradley Shaw.
Yeah.
I was bummed. I love Brad Spence. I'm bummed that he's a Texas Longhorn now.
Yeah.
Xavier Sorey is going to be one of the best linebackers in the SEC.
Yep.
I mean, he's a dog, and
Yep.
And it's like the Drew Sanders effect. 5-star kid doesn't play a lot elsewhere, comes to Arkansas, starts. I mean, it's literally a same school situation, or sorry, same situation, different school with Alabama and Georgia.
Yep.
He made that bonehead play against Oklahoma State, but outside of that, he was so good for your football team this year. How many times did I see him meet the running back in the hole, beat a lineman to the spot, and get in the backfield? Just a great player. Dix being back's a good deal. I know they're excited about some young guys like Tavion Wallace.
Yep.
But in terms of, and they bring in, what is it? Trent Grimes? Is that what I'm thinking? Trent?
Yes.
Trent Whalen. Trent Whalen. Sorry. Trent Whalen. So that's I know a team, but it's Xavier Sorey and the rest of them. And again, I know Bradley Shaw helped on that 4th and goal stop against the opponent last year, and who I'm not 100% remembering, but he's the young up and comer I'm most excited about. But the best player in that group's Sorey. It's not close.
That's why I feel linebacker, they were worried about depth, and rightfully so, and they addressed that in the portal. But if you and I mean, you always got to worry about injuries, but at least the guys that they're going to run out there week 1, I think you have to feel really good about. And it's you hit it. There's no point in continuing to go on and on, but that starts and finishes with Sorey. He projects to be, and he should be, one of the better linebackers in the entire SEC. And it's a great example of finding talent. And I think it's a great comp in terms of what you were talking about there. It's a similar feel, you know what I mean, with Sorey. And I mean, he was fun last year, and he should only be better this year. I'll go 7. Somewhere in there. I do feel good about the linebackers as long as they can stay healthy. It just is, that's the key. If they don't stay healthy, it's sketchy behind them.
So think about, like, let's go year by year with T. Will. So 2 years ago, when you had the Wisconsin kid whose name Jaheim Thomas, you had Chris Paul, that was a really good group. You lose a bunch of those guys, you're freaking out as a fan.
Yeah.
And then last year, you could make an argument that they were even better at that group. Yeah. And so this year, I'm with you about a 7 for T. Will's group, because that's, of course, his former position, and he is just. I mentioned Deke Adams maximizing his guys.
Yeah.
The linebacker room has been salty with Coach Williams here. So I'm excited. I would give it at least a 7 heading into this year, assuming that Sorey, like if Sorey got injured anyway, that plummets. But
yeah, I mean, that's same with every
leader.
Yeah, same with every position group. But I think you feel confident about the linebackers. Secondary is interesting, Ty. It is a bunch of new pieces, and I think it could go a variety of different ways. I'm curious how you feel about the secondary with all of. I mean, you bring in Caleb Wooden, you bring in Jordan Young, Kenai Walker, Quintavious Scandrett, Keyshawn Davila, Miguel Mitchell's back, Selman Bridges, who is a highly touted freshman, figures to play a big-time role as well. Jaheim Singletary, another Georgia transfer from a couple of years ago. He's back as well. Where do you fall in terms of the secondary 1 to 10, and what are you expecting to see from that group?
Yeah, and you got Worth back with speed, which I know is encouraging. Him and Dix are two guys that contributed a lot last year. it's a little, I mean, it's a little worse. You got a new coach back there as well. So there are some there, I would say, and it's kind of hard because Coach Pittman addressed, he was like, we need to get some defensive guys. Well, first 4 guys were defensive guys, right?
Yeah.
So after that, kind of went a little, you got quarterback, wide receiver, you got a few others, but it, when I hear that, that leads me to believe that they've got to add piecewise. Again, this is, you mentioned a couple of holdovers from last year's squad. They lost a lot last year too. So it's really, again, difficult. 4 or 5. Is that too low?
No, I
mean,
think, yeah, it's right in there. I'll go. Well, we'll get specific. I'll say 5.5, just because I think I feel a little bit similar and better than I do about the defensive line in terms of, I think that they added enough depth pieces from the transfer portal and they made it such a priority that I do think you're going to see some of these guys pop. I think Kenai Walker is really interesting from Oklahoma, and just he's got a really interesting frame. He brings the recruiting pedigree. And then the one that flew a little bit under the radar was, they go and get Julian Neal in the spring portal window. I mean, that's a guy that was there weren't a lot available, but he was the top corner available in the portal. And that's a guy, along with Caleb Wooden, who figures to slot in where TJ Metcalf was. Those are 2 guys that I think will come in and help you right away. It just is, it's going to be interesting to see how it all pans out. You are just going to need new faces to pop up. I can't remember who I was talking with about, but it's clear they like a specific type of DB, because if you roll through the roster, man, it's like sometimes you'll find small slot guys that are competitive or whatever it might be, 5'11", whatever. But these guys are 6'2", 6'3", long and physical corners, figure to be bothering wide receivers a little bit like that.
You brought up TJ and also his younger brother Ted. That hurt me when they went to Michigan. I mean, that hurt because I was like, this is an Alabama kid that showed out against Auburn.
Yeah.
Like, just went off last season. And I'm thinking he's going to be the cog in the secondary for the next 2 or 3 years. And then sure enough, see the portal news. And then I see go Big Blue. And I'm just like, oh, yeah, it's painful.
Yeah, and that's one. I mean, that just frustrates you. I mean, you don't need to belabor the point, right? But like, that's a guy that Auburn and Alabama don't recruit, and Arkansas recruits the Birmingham area really well, and they identified him as a talent, right? And he comes in and he plays the way that he does, and it just is frustrating. It's college football in 2025, right? You feel like you should be rewarded for a recruiting win like that, identifying talent in somebody else's backyard that they didn't, and instead, he leaves you for Michigan. Just tough. But the funny connection there is, Caleb Wooden's going to slot right into that spot. And he was talking with Otis Kirk, interviewed him. And Caleb talked about the reason he made Arkansas a priority was, if you remember, Caleb's a Auburn kid, and TJ just went ballistic in that Auburn game back there. He had 2 picks. He forced a fumble. He made like 7 tackles. And Caleb was like, man, I could do that. And so he made Arkansas a priority when he entered the portal, and sure enough, it ends up working out. I'm not even going to make you say special teams. I got no idea. That's where I fall. Ty.
Yeah, kickers can
be scary. It's going to be scary.
Well, the kicker. So let's separate the 2.
Yeah.
You have no idea about the kicking game. I'd be scared. And we've been that way since Cam Little left. Punting wise, you're going to have a Ray Guy finalist.
Yeah.
Like it's, and I don't think that's like, I haven't overblown one thing, I think, in this interview so far. I've been pretty like, but Devin, give him hail Bell.
Yeah.
I think is what Sam Pittman, he's a dog. Like they were, I think, top 10 in a lot of punting categories last year.
Yeah.
So if you want to talk about a position group, like a singular one, the punting game, that is one position group that you can be, I'd give it a 9 or a 10.
All right.
I hate that I'm saying that about the punter. It might be the most important person, the best player on your team, but that's where we're at.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. We'll see ultimately. But regardless, that's a quick run through of position groups. And again, kicker's going to be interesting. I'll battle that out in the fall. And Cam Shanks is somebody to be really excited about. He did a lot of fun special teams work before he came over to Arkansas. So he's going to be a lot of fun in the return game as well, if you want to look at that. But after the break, we're going to talk a little bit about baseball. You got a trip coming up to LSU, and obviously a big win for the Razorbacks against the Longhorns. Baseball talk coming up after the break. All right, from the gridiron to the diamond. Ty, heck of a weekend for the Diamond Hogs. I did not see that coming. We were talking pessimism during football. That's where I was going into that Texas series. The Hogs sweep. What was your perspective of that? First sweep in program history. Texas came to Fayetteville with 2 SEC losses. They leave with 5, 3 in one weekend from the Razorbacks. I mean, the Hogs woke up in every capacity. It was one heck of a weekend, pitching, at the plate, everything.
It was awesome, man.
Yeah.
I got a chance to take in the game on Thursday. Saw
Same.
your cohort Evan there
Yeah.
as well. I know he enjoyed himself a nice hot dog at Baumwalker Stadium, but I think anyone that was there enjoyed it this weekend. I got a chance to talk to a fan that was his dad was in for the weekend, and it was like the best father son thing ever. So I think it's one of those things where Arkansas fans just get up for playing Texas in anything.
Yeah.
And
Great
for
crowd.
this baseball team to deliver in the form of fashion they did. I mean, Zach Root set the tone for the series. I mean, here's a kid who was a really good pitcher for East Carolina. Doesn't know anything about Arkansas and Texas. As a Florida, I think Fort Myers, Florida, comes in and has the best game of his life.
Yeah.
11 strikeouts, 8
Unbelievable.
innings. I mean, the only reason you pull him is because you need him in innings later on. You don't want to use up an inning that you might need here in a couple of weeks. So you got to give. I mean, the SEC game is just due with the SEC Pitcher of the Week, but you cannot say enough about that kid.
Yeah, set the tone in a big way. And Dave was funny at his Swatters Club appearance yesterday. He got asked, did you think about putting Zach back in, go for the complete game? And he said, no, I did not think about that one time. He goes, if you noticed, he goes, when Zach came off the mound after that strikeout in the 8th inning, he was pretty pumped up, and he said he had some words for the Texas dugout. He goes, that's usually something you do when you're not going back out. He goes, I think Zach knew he was done as well. He was putting a cap on it there. But I was there as a fan actually on Thursday with my parents, and the funniest thing about it was, my parents are from South Bend, Indiana. And they are not, following inning to inning of Arkansas baseball, right? And at one point, my dad turned and looked at me in the 6th or 7th inning, and he was just like, "You're telling me this is the number 1 team in the country?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "And you're telling me Arkansas has lost 3 straight series?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "I would never in a million years have guessed that." And I kind of thought that was the perfect summary of the weekend, right? I dropped my parents into it, really just like, we're going to go to a baseball game. And my dad's just looking at me. He's like, what on earth is going on? And it was just, it all came together at the right time, because this was a team, it wasn't as if they looked dead in the water or anything like that, but they sure didn't look like they did at the beginning of SEC play. And, to dominate the way they did in games 1 and game 2, and then they could have, when they went down in game 3, they could have said, we won the series, heck of a weekend. Yep. And then they battled back, and Reese Robinette's the game that he did. It was just all around almost a perfect weekend for the Diamond Hogs.
Yeah, you mentioned the exact same thing. Honestly, Dave Van Hort addressed is like, hey, well, you could have been okay with the series win, and yet they wanted the throat. There's this. I know you've probably seen it. So there's an old the Swamp Kings doc with Urban Meyer. Remember when Major Wright was like, former Florida safety was like, I didn't want the ball, I wanted him. Arkansas was like, I don't want the win, I want their soul, because they took Texas's soul this week. What I'm hoping is that series just spirals Texas out of control. Like they were on such a high, and you just rip their hearts out for the rest of the season. That's what I'm hoping. But we'll see what transpires here in these next few weeks.
Yeah, it just nuts when you start adding up everything. If Texas had won 10 straight games, like I said, they'd only lost 2 SEC games. They lose 3 in one weekend. It's the first sweep since Oklahoma did it in Big 12 play back in 2023. So 2 seasons since Texas has been swept. It was a, I've said it, I think 7 times now, but it was a heck of a weekend. And you hope not only does that spiral the horns, you hope it catapults Arkansas, because it doesn't get any easier. And the reason I wanted to talk baseball is you'll be in Baton Rouge, Ty. You have the opportunity. How much are you looking forward to seeing the Hogs take on the Tigers?
Man, I'm excited. Got a chance to see these teams match up in Alex Box a few years ago. It was 4 years ago when Arkansas won that series. And it's an incredible environment. It's one of the best in not just the SEC, but in college baseball. LSU fans are just as passionate as our fans are when it comes to baseball and everything else. So LSU losing last weekend to Texas A&M, their backs aren't against the wall, But this series is more meaningful to them
Yeah.
than it is Arkansas after Arkansas just beats their arch rival. So Dave Van Horn talked about it at the Waters Club yesterday. He feels like they'll respond and be fine. I don't think there's going to be an emotional letdown, but this is a place where Arkansas has not had a lot of success, mostly because you've seen Hall of Famers and all these draft picks that have worn purple and gold. So you can't really blame them for that. But they're going to have to bring it this weekend. Root's going to, you're not asking him to pitch 8
No.
innings, 11 strikeouts, only give up 2 hits, but you need a good showing from him. Like he kind of dropped off a little bit in these last couple of series prior to this last one. So you need a type of performance that at least can propel you into the weekend against this salty LSU ball club.
Yeah, it's a good point. DVH mentioned that yesterday as well, where it's, Zach hasn't put together 2 bad performances in a row this season, but he hasn't really put together 2 gems in a row either. So you hope to see a good performance on Friday, because that just, you said it set the tone for the whole weekend, and that's what your Friday starters got to do. And DVH talked a little bit about, they're unsure Sunday starter. Landon might come out of the pen, and with the way that both Wood and Gackle have been pitching on Saturdays, it's a potential for a change there for the Razorbacks. But regardless, you'll be in Baton Rouge taking it all in. I'd be lying, man. I'm jealous of you. It's a heck of an atmosphere, and hopefully it ends up being a good result for the Hogs. But that's going to do it for this week's Hog Roundup. That is Ty Richardson. I am Jacob Morris. We will be back to talk to you next week.